Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name's Gretchen and today I am back with another anticipated releases video for the next month. So we are at the beginning of May, and this is kind of the start of summer book season. So as I go through my list today, there are several books that I think are going to be great reads for those lazy summer days or beach reads. And we have quite a few books on this list. I tried to contain myself, but there were just too many good ones this month to not talk about. So the way that I separate these books out is I'll go by week, and our first publication week in the States for May is going to be the week of May 7th, and there's a handful of books on my list that I want to talk about. So first and foremost, we have a book called The Lady Waiting, and that is by Magdalena Zyzak, and this is going to be published by Riverhead. And this book sounds really intriguing to me, and what I took away from the blurb was it's the White Lotus meets the talented Mr. Ripley in this high-spirited novel of a stolen Vermeer, a Polish transplant in LA, and the charismatic couple who seduce her into a misguided international heist. That sounds like a good time to me, and I think that that's going to be a really fun, probably quick, fast-paced read for this summer. Maybe it's something you could take on vacation with you. Now, the second book is one that was not even on my radar until a few months ago, but when I heard that this was coming out, I was over the moon excited about it. So that is going to be Long Island by Colm Toibin, and this is being published by Scribner. So this is a book that is part of a series now. I'm so excited to say that. It's a follow-up to Toibin's 2009 Booker Prize longlisted book, Brooklyn, which I adored with all of my heart. I absolutely loved that book, and I was so excited to see that after 15 years, we were getting another book that follows that main character, Eilish. I loved her as a character. So apparently this book has Eilish one day, she's living on Long Island, she's in her 40s now. She gets a knock on her door from an Irishman, and this man tells Eilish that his wife is pregnant with a baby that is her husband's. So he also tells her that once the baby is born, he doesn't want anything to do with it. He doesn't want his wife to have anything to do with it. So he's basically going to drop it on Eilish's doorstep and let her and her husband handle the baby. So that premise in itself sounds super fascinating, and it definitely sounds like it's going to be a great book. I love his books so much. I love his writing. His prose is beautiful. He always makes me emotional, and just knowing what this book is about tells me that that is also going to happen with this one as well. The next book that I'm really looking forward to coming out is called Cinema Love by Jaiming Tang, and this is published by Dutton. Now, this one, I'm just going to read you the blurb. For over 30 years, Old Second and Bao Mei have cobbled together a meager existence in New York City's Chinatown. But unlike other couples, these two share an unusual past. In rural Fuzhou, before they emigrated, they frequented the Workers' Cinema, a theater where gay men cruised for love. While classic war films played, Old Second and his countrymen found intimacy in the screening rooms. In the box office, Bao Mei sold movie tickets to closeted men, guarding their secrets and finding her own happiness with the projectionist. But when Old Second's passion for his male lover is revealed, a series of haunting events unfold, propelling these characters toward an uncertain future in America. Spanning 3 lifetimes, post-socialist China, 1980s Chinatown, and contemporary New York, Cinema Love is an exceptional and moving epic about men and women who find themselves in forbidden relationships, the weight of secrets, and the way memory forever haunts the present. So this just sounds like a really emotional book. It sounds very complex and multi-layered, and I think that this is going to be a really good book to maybe put on your June Pride TBR if you are going to be reading Pride during the month of June. Now with the next one, hear me out. I'm still a little on the fence about this one, but it sounds really interesting and like it could be really good or it could be really bad, but hear me out. So this one is called The Ministry of Time by Kaliane Bradley, and this is published by Avid Reader Press. So we have a woman and she's a civil servant and she is given a new job, and once she agrees to the job, she is given her task, and her task basically includes her gathering expats from different times in history and trying to figure out whether or not time travel is feasible for not only the human body, but also for the fabric of space-time in general. So she is paired with someone from history, and she's working as what they call a bridge, and her person that she is connected with is Graham Gore, and he was a part of John Franklin's Arctic expedition that failed, and Graham Gore supposedly died or did die during that trek. So she is paired with this guy from the mid 1800s. So he is not used to being around a modern woman, and she is getting used to now dealing with somebody that has never been in this time before, and things are probably going to get very weird, and we do know that there is an element of a love story, it sounds, in this as well. So this isn't my typical genre. It does sound a little odd, and like it can be a book that really hits the mark or it falls flat on its face, but it does sound just super interesting and a wild enough ride that I want to check it out. So I don't know if I'm going to jump into this one right away or commit to it. I think I'll probably wait to see what some of the first reviews I hear coming in for it are, but it's definitely one that is on my radar and I am looking forward to it coming out. The next book for the week of May 7th is called Whalefall, and it's by Elizabeth O'Connor, and this is published by Knopf. Now this one says it is set in 1938, and for Maynard, a young woman living on a remote island off the coast of Wales, the world looks ready to end just as she is trying to imagine a future for herself. The ominous appearance of a beached whale on the island shores and rumors of submarines circling beneath the waves have villagers steeling themselves for what's to come. Empty houses remind them of the men taken by the Great War and of the difficulty of building a life in the island's harsh, salt-stung landscape. When two anthropologists from the mainland arrive, Maynard sees in them a rare moment of opportunity to leave the island and discover the life she has been searching for, but as she guides them across the island's cliffs, she becomes entangled in their relationship, and her imagined future begins to seem desperately out of reach. So this is a debut novel. It is getting top praise from the likes of Maggie O'Farrell, Colm Toibin, even Anne Enright, who is very relevant at the moment with her being shortlisted for the Women's Prize. So I am sure this being a debut and getting such strong praise from these heavyweight authors that at least we're probably guaranteed some strong and beautiful writing. And I just really love lonely, sad little books with the backdrop of the sea, and I'm sure that because of that I'm at least gonna enjoy the setting and the atmosphere of this book as well. So definitely one that I want to take a chance on. And then the last book that we have coming out the week of May 7th is a book called The Mother of All Things by Alexa Landau, and it is being published by Knopf. So basically we have an art history professor her. Her husband is a film producer, I think, and they travel to Bulgaria where her husband is doing some type of work with a film. And once they get there, the main character, I think her name is Ava, she is unexpectedly reunited with her mentor from back in her college days. And her mentor exposes her to this group of women that they are doing reenactments of these mystery rites of initiation from ancient Greco-Roman days, and Ava having a love of art history and her actively working on a research project, I believe, is kind of caught up in all of this. So she also discovers that what is happening with these rites of initiation and working with these women, she's really starting to see a lot of parallels between their ancient lives and her modern life. So it sounds super feminist. The blurb says that it dives into themes of motherhood and family, female rage and grief. So it definitely has the potential to be a book I would enjoy. And this sounds like another one of those ones that could definitely be a hit or a miss. So although I'm anticipating it, it's another one I'm gonna kind of sit back for a little bit to see if I hear anything, you know, positive or negative about it before I really fully commit to it. All right, so we are moving on to the week of May 14th, and the first book that I want to talk about is a book called Pages of Mourning by Gerard Morrison. After reading the blurb, it's a little convoluted, so I will read directly from the publisher as to what they have to say, just so I don't miss anything, because like I said, it is a little complex and it does sound a little complicated, so I want to make sure I get this right. So it says, it's 2017 and the crisis of forced disappearances has reached a tipping point after 43 docent students disappeared and are feared dead. Aureliano Mas II is a fledgling writer at a lucrative fellowship in Mexico City, chaired by his aunt, Rose. When Aureliano was very young, his mother left without reason or trace. Aureliano is attempting to write a novel that mirrors his mother's unexplained disappearance while shattering magical realism as a genre in the process. It doesn't help, though, that he's named after the protagonist of a touchstone of the magical realist canon and raised in the mythical town of Kamala. Aureliano searches for insight and closure from his father and from Rose, who grappled with his mother's disappearance through a failed novel of her own. Their stories lead back to the 1980s and the burgeoning drug trade as Rose and Aureliano's mother journey as young runaways through the Mexican countryside. Meanwhile, Aureliano's addictions and the overwhelming burden of the past threaten his tenuous position at the fellowship, just as a deadly earthquake strikes Mexico City on the exact same date as a legendary earthquake struck in 1985. Pages of Mourning is a daring, captivating, darkly funny novel that grapples with uncertainty and loss in a land of violence and superstition while questioning whether magical realism as a genre is capable of confronting the brutal dissonance of a country that awaits the return of the missing while not wholly acknowledging their death. So that says a lot. And I will say, I hope the book is written better than that blurb, because that was kind of all over the place and it was very confusing. But this sounds like a book right up my alley. I love magical realism, first of all, and I love 100 Years of Solitude. It's one of my favorite books of all time. So for there to be references in the blurb, I'm already digging that about this book. So there is going to be an audience for this book, I'm sure. There are a lot of folks out there that don't get along with magical realism. I personally personally love it. Give me all the magical realism and I will just read it up. And for those of you that are a fan of 100 Years of Solitude, I'm not sure if you're aware that Netflix is going to be putting out sometime this year. I think it's like a 16 episode adaptation. So, oh my gosh, I am so excited. They just released the trailer a few days ago and it looks like it's gonna be really good. So just keep that in mind. We might not only have a book that references it and has to do a lot with magical realism, but we have that adaptation to look forward to as well. So the next book being released that week that I'm looking forward to is The Vladivostok Circus by Elisa, Shua, Dusapin, and it's translated from the French by Anissa Abbas Higgins. Now this one is another strange one. And it doesn't give a whole lot in the blurb, but it is just enough to intrigue me. So it's narrated by a woman named Natalie, and Natalie is a new grad from fashion school, and she moves to Vladivostok, and she is there working with the circus as a designer for the costumes for a trio of performers that are training to do this death-defying, super dangerous act called the Russian Bar. And once the circus season starts to settle down and all of the different performers go their separate ways for the winter, there are 4 that remain behind. There is the entirety of the trio. So we have all of the performers that are a part of that act, and we have their manager. From what I can gather, the book is really following these 4 characters as they perform and practice and prepare for a festival performance that they have agreed to that's about 2,000 miles away from Vladivostok that's going to be happening right before the holidays. So it's basically accounting what those 4 people are doing on a day-to-day basis and how they're truly like building trust with each other, how they're working together against a daily threat of death and potential tragedy. So it sounds charming, it sounds like it's quaint, and I've always heard such good things about the author's other books. This book, although it doesn't really sound too compelling on the surface, this to me sounds like one of those sleeper books that is going to give so much more than what you expect just by reading the little synopsis that they give you on the back of the book. So this is another one that is actually high on my list. It ticks a lot of my boxes, and I love the fact that it's translated. It's by an author that I have heard amazing things about in the past, and it's one that I will likely prioritize. Next we have the title Challenger, and this is by Adam Higginbotham, and this is also by Avid Reader Press, and this is going to account the true story of the tragic fate of the Challenger space shuttle and its 7 passengers. Now, this book is supposedly different than other books that have been written about this topic in the past. It takes archived research and firsthand reporting that took place leading up to, during, and after the disaster occurred, and the blurb hints that there are new things that are uncovered and that are going to be revealed from whistleblowers that have come out of the woodwork, and we can expect information that was previously hidden from the public in the past. So this sounds like a super fascinating book, and it's going to be one of those books that probably stirs up a lot of anger and a lot of emotions. I remember this event clear as day. It is one of my most vivid memories as a child. I know that sounds strange, but I was 6 years old when it happened, but I remember that day like it just happened. It is forever ingrained in my memory, and it's something that I will absolutely never forget. So I'm really interested in reading this book, and I know because it is such a strong memory that I have had throughout the entirety of my my life that it's definitely going to hit me hard, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what this author has uncovered and really hoping that we can get some answers as to why something like that had to happen in the first place. So I definitely am looking forward to that one, not because I want to be sad, but I think that stories like this are really important if you can get that information out, and maybe it could, you know, create a little bit of closure for those family members that still remain behind. So yeah, that one is definitely going to be high on my list, and I always like to have at least one piece of nonfiction in my anticipated releases. So next we have a book called Wormwood, and this is by Layla Martinez, and it is translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes and Annie McDermott. This is a debut novel, and it sounds to me like it's in the horror genre, which I don't typically read horror, but this sounds like my kind of horror. So the book says, "The house breathes. The house contains bodies and secrets. The house is visited by ghosts, by angels that line the roof like insects, and by saints that burn the bed sheets with their halos. It was built by a small-time hustler as a means of controlling his wife, and even after so many years, their daughter and her granddaughter can't leave. They may be witches, or they may just be angry, but when the mysterious disappearance of a young boy draws unwanted attention, the two isolated women, already subjects of public scorn, combine forces with the spirits that haunt them in pursuit of something that resembles justice." So, like I said, I don't read a lot of horror, but this is the type of vibe that I like to get from my horror when I do get in that mood to pick up a book like that. It sounds like a fun time, and this might be one that I actually hold on to until closer to Halloween. Maybe read this in, early autumn in the lead up to Halloween. It just kind of gives you that spooky, creepy feeling, and I definitely think that this sounds like it's going to be a fun ride. So the next book is called Blue Ruin by Hari Kunzru, and this is published by Knopf. And this book says, "Once Jay was an artist. After graduating from art school in London, he was tipped for greatness, a promising career taking shape before him. That was not to happen. Now, undocumented in the United States, having survived COVID, he lives out of his car and barely makes a living as an essential worker, delivering groceries in a wealthy area of upstate New York. One day, as Jay attempts to make a delivery at a house surrounded by acres of woods, he is confronted by his destructive past. Alice, a former lover from his art school days, and the friend she left him for. Recognizing Jay's dire circumstances, Alice invites him to stay on their property, where an erratic gallery owner and his girlfriend are isolating as well, setting in motion a reckoning that has been decades in the making." So I don't know why I am so intrigued by that blurb. I think I've really been into books about artists and art lately, and it might have something to do with that. I am definitely gonna try to prioritize this. I know I still have a lot of my book prize books to get through, but once I do, I'm hoping to get to that one. And like I said, I really can't explain why I'm so intrigued by the idea of this book. It just seems like there is something really mysterious or revealing about the book, and I'm just so intrigued, and I want to find out all of the juicy bits that go on in this book. So definitely looking forward to that one. Okay, so now we're moving on to the week of May 21st, and here is where we start to get into some of those lighthearted, lazy days of summer type books. And the first one I am super excited about, so don't laugh. It's The Guncle Abroad by Stephen Rowley. This is gonna be a light, funny, comedic book, and it is a sequel to the Guncle. And for those of you that have read it, you're likely going to be excited about this one because that was such a fun and good book. I can't imagine many reading it that didn't enjoy it. And for those that haven't read it, I do suggest, if you're looking for a really kind of feel-good, fun, very light-hearted, quick read, it's definitely going to tick all of those boxes. So I love Stephen Rowley books in general. There are very few of his that I have read that I wasn't a fan of. I didn't really get along too well with his last one, which was called The Celebrants, and I am really hoping to get back to a world that I love with Patrick and his niece and nephew, and learn about more of what they are up to. So as always, I know when I have a book from Stephen Rowley, I'm gonna be laughing, I'm gonna be tearing up, because they do tend to be poignant and emotional at the same time, but in the best way possible. And this is just gonna be one of those perfect books that I would love to read, you know, beachside or poolside. And the next book that I want to talk about is going to be the same kind of vibe. One of those books that is going to be a beach read, or, you know, a quick one to take on vacation with you, or a good plain book as well. And that is called I Hope This Finds You Well, and it's by Natalie Sue, and it's published by Morrow. So as I said, this is going to be another light, funny book that doesn't take itself too seriously. And this is set in an office and focuses on office politics and office life. So basically we have an admin worker that accidentally gains access to her colleagues' private emails and direct messages, and she decides to use that information to save her job. I don't know why she's losing her job, but she is using this as fodder, or maybe even blackmail, to save her job. So it sounds like it's going to be a very funny book. It sounds like there's going to be kind of probably hijinks in it. There's going to be probably some ridiculousness in it. And it also says that it's perfect for fans of Anxious People, and Eleanor Oliphant is completely fine. And I did enjoy both of those books, so that's promising. And once again, this is another one of those summer books that's not taking itself too seriously, that's gonna be a quick, fun read that can take your mind off maybe some of the more serious books that you're diving into. Which leads me into the next book, which is called Butcher by Joyce Carol Oates. Now, full disclosure, I have never read a book by Joyce Carol Oates, but I have for some reason really been itching to start reading some of her works. I know that she is a very popular author, and there are so many people out there that absolutely love her work. I just haven't really known where to get started. And I'm not saying that this book is where I will start with her, but I know that there are a lot of you out there that do enjoy her writing, and this is probably one that you're excited about coming out too. So this book also sounds like super creepy and making the reader really uneasy. So it says, in this harrowing story based on authentic historical documents, so I love when we have some element of truth to our fiction, we follow the career of Dr. Silas Weir, the father of gyno-psychiatry, that's interesting, as he ascends from professional anonymity to national renown. Humiliated by a procedure gone terribly wrong, Weir is forced to take a position at the New Jersey Asylum for Female Lunatics, where he reigns. There he is allowed to continue his practice, unchecked for decades, making a name for himself by focusing on women who have been neglected by the state, women he subjects to the most grotesque modes of experimentation. As he begins to establish himself as a pioneer of 19th century surgery, Weir's ambition is fueled by his obsessive fascination with a young Irish indentured servant named Brigitte, who becomes not only Weir's primary experimental subject, but also the agent of his destruction. So that sounds really, really good. And this might be another one, if I can get maybe a beginner Joyce Carol Oates in before this one, this sounds like a book that I would maybe prioritize more in the autumn months, kind of like in spooky season, because this sounds dark and creepy and like it's just gonna be a super unsettling and interesting read. All right, so now we are rounding out the month with our final week of new releases. So these are going to be coming to us the week of May 28th, and I have 3 to get through. And first we have A Good Life by Virginie Grimaldi, and this is translated from the French by Hildegard Serrel, and this is from Europa Editions. So this book follows 2 sisters. We have Emma and Agatha, and they, when they were younger, were super close, and like they had a very strong sisterly bond. Now we have Agatha, who is kind of chaotic and all over the place, and we have Emma, who has always been, you know, pretty mature for her age. She's described as the defender, the protector, the worrier. Now there is something that happens as adults that kind of makes them drift apart, and I'm hoping that we learn more about that. We should. And then an event brings them together, having to do, I believe, with the death of their grandmother and them having to come back to settle her affairs. And from there, I'm sure that all of that messiness starts to come out. And although there are so many books on the market like this, I am always such a sucker for them. I love that family drama. I love when there's tragedy that brings families together. I love anything to do with siblings and fractured relationships. So there's lots of catnip for Gretchen in a book like this. Not only that, I think we have dual perspectives, and also this is translated fiction, which is my jam, and it's a Europa edition, which I'll say it again, I'm trash for Europa editions. Doesn't matter what it is, I'm going to want to read it. So there's a lot going on for this book, especially for me. The only complaint that I will say is the cover. This to me just makes it look like another piece of contemporary women's fiction, and I just don't really feel it's on brand for Europa, but we'll see what happens. I still want to read it, and I'm really hoping that it delivers. Now this next one sounds super fun. Now it's called Allow Me to Introduce Myself, and it's by Onyi Nwabineli, and it's published by Graydon House. Now this one sounds really good to me, and a book that's going to be super relevant, and I think a lot of people are going to relate to this book, and if they don't fully relate to the content of the book, they're gonna know someone in their life that this book would like perfectly encapsulate. This book being released also reminds me that this author came out with a book last year called Someday Maybe that I have yet to get to, and I have heard really good things about that book, and this is just another reminder to me that that's another book that I need to prioritize on my TBR, because I really have heard so many praises for her debut, and I would maybe like to read that one before jumping into this one. So it was a perfect reminder. Now this book follows our main character, Anori, and all of Anori's life, her childhood, and now I believe she's in her mid-20s. Her childhood was on camera, and she was the unwilling participant in her stepmother's social media life, where her stepmother accounted every single thing that Anori did while growing up. So Anori is so used to being in the spotlight. Social media has made her almost like a celebrity, and she is very well known, and even as an adult she cannot go out in public without constantly being recognized recognized from all of the videos and accounts that her stepmother forced her to be a part of during her childhood. So now Honori is like, no, like I'm done with that. Well, Honori also learns that I believe she has a 5-year-old sister. Her 5-year-old sister is now the subject of her stepmother's social media life, and she doesn't want that same fate for her sister. So this sounds like it is gonna be super messy, super complicated, and it's gonna tackle a lot of those relevant issues and questions that we have today about what about all of those parents that are putting their children out into social media and making them the center of their accounts and their content? Are these children willing participants? Is this something that's going to scar those children for life, or is it going to be something that positively shapes them, you know, into well-functioning adults? So I think this is going to be one of those books that brings up a lot of really important questions we need to ask ourselves, and it sounds like it's going to be a really good time, and I'm excited about this one. And last but not least, we have a book from a pretty well-known author. I don't believe he has come out with a book for a while, and he's kind of been more relevant as of late because one of his previous books, One Day, has recently been adapted into a series on Netflix. Although it was previously adapted into a movie, it just recently kind of got a reboot on Netflix, and that is David Nicholls, and the new title is You Are Here, and this is published by HarperCollins. So we have two main characters in this book. We have Michael and we have Marnie. Now Michael, who is recently, I believe, divorced or separated from his wife. All that I know from the blurb is that his wife has departed, and he is not handling that very well. He is not liking this feeling of loneliness that he has, and the way that he's kind of coping with it is going on these long walks through the English countryside. He doesn't want to be stuck at home in that lonely, empty space. And then we have Marnie, who is kind of the opposite. So her heart is broken as well, and her response to that heartbreak is she wants to stay at home. She is becoming a homebody, and her idea of comfort is staying at home with a good book, which sounds like heaven to me, but she is not going out to social events. She's kind of really isolating herself, and it's not really healthy for her. So Michael and Marnie have a mutual friend, and that friend is trying to put them together, but apparently there is some unpredictable weather event that happens that tosses Michael and Marnie together, and I think that it ends up with them on some type of like 10-mile hike or something. So it sounds like there's an adventure, and it definitely sounds like we're leading to romance. If not romance, maybe a very strong friendship, but my guess is romance. And I think that it just sounds like a super sweet, charming, funny story. I definitely think that this is going to be a book that's hopeful. So with all of the dark or complicated books that we have on this list, this is that book that's probably going to be the most hopeful. It just sounds, like I said, super sweet, super charming, and it also sounds like it has really lovable and likable characters. I haven't read the book, but Michael and Marnie already sound like characters that I like, so I hope that that's true. And also, it's another one of those books that I don't think it's going to require too much brain power, and it's going to be great for those long, lazy summer days. And it's set in nature, I'm assuming, because they're going on a hike, and we'll see what happens. So yeah, those are my May anticipated reads. I'm really looking forward to prioritizing some of these. Like I said, some of them are more, I think, going to align with my reading tastes and my mood for later in the year when we get closer to autumn, but I'm still excited and I'm really looking forward to hearing from you if there are any like glaring books that I missed. And yeah, thanks again for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope that you found some reads to put on your TBR that you're now excited for the summer. And until we read again, bye.